commercial buildings. And then to the west is 2 residential properties. So currently on the site, we have about a 6,100 square foot office building in the northeastern corner. It's currently used by Ronnie Dimeo Construction. They're a local contractor in town. We have 1 access drive coming off of Dividend Road in the center of the frontage here. And then there's a paved drive aisle that comes out through to the back of the existing building there. And then around this point right here, it changes to a gravel drive. And this whole section here is all gravel drive. And at this rock pile right here, the access drive changes to a dirt road, and it goes up a relatively steep slope to the rear of the property here, where they're presently doing some excavation. So all the parking for the property right now, there's 4 parking spaces off the east side of the existing building here. And the remainder of the parking is off the south side of the access drive here. It's kind of hard to see because there's a bunch of stuff in the way on this picture, but this is where most of the cars park for this office here. So topography on the site, the side property lines, the north and south property lines, and the rear property line to the west are high points, and the whole site kind of drains to the center of the property and then down to the frontage from there. So the stormwater on the site uses 2 catch basins presently. There's one located right here in the middle of the gravel area, and that picks up the majority of the rear portion of the property. And then there's another catch basin right here in the curb cut to the frontage, and that catches the remainder of the property that this middle catch basin doesn't. And then those 2 catch basins tie into the existing system underneath Dividend Road. And the remainder of the utilities for the building come off services from Dividend Road, including the sewer and the water. And there's 2 utility poles down here in the southeastern corner of the property that the electric services come off of. So we also are bordered on 2 sides by the residential district. So we have 2 buffers. Off the west side, the buffer is 50 feet off of our property line, as the zone line is right on the property line. And off the southern property line, the buffer actually falls about 15 feet in our property right on the building line, because that zone line is offset 35 feet from the other side of the property line. So as you can see in this picture, presently a lot of the site is used by outdoor storage. It varies from machines, equipment, materials. There's excavation processing material, there's dirt piles, there's rock piles. So we feel with what we're proposing for the site, it's really going to clean up the site, and it's going to make everything indoor storage rather than outdoor storage like it is now. So I'll move on to the proposed plan. As Jim said, we are proposing 5 buildings on the property. They're all contractors' buildings. All of them are 6,000 square feet each, except for building number 1, which is this front building here. That one's proposed at 6,750 square feet. Each building is comprised of 4 units, and each unit will have its own garage, and the majority of the unit on the inside is used for indoor storage. And then there's also a small spot for office use and a bathroom in each unit as well. And then on the front of each unit, they each have a minimum of 2 parking spaces provided there, and then in addition to this one in the back. So what we're proposing for the front is to keep the existing curb cut coming off of Dividend Road, and this lighter gray portion of the parking area we're proposing as keeping that area of the parking, and then having the new drive aisle come in up through the center of the property and to the back of building number 5 here. So to the south of this, we are proposing a larger parking area here in addition to the 2 parking spaces in front of each unit. And then another small parking area in the northwest corner here between buildings 4 and 5. So total, the zoning regulations require us to have 98 parking spaces, and we're proposing 110 parking spaces. So we're actually 12 spaces over the requirement. So I'll talk a little bit about the topography that we're working with. We're trying to keep it the existing ground level coming off of the curb cut and Dividend Road up to the rear portion of this existing building here. So that varies from 1% to 2%. And then starting at that point, going up to building 5, we're proposing a 6.7% slope of the drive aisle. And with that, this parking area would also be at a 6.7% slope due to it being right off the side of the drive aisle. Now, the town only allows a parking area to be 5% or less. So we're asking that the commission allow us to continue with the 6.7% drive aisle, the slope. And the reason for that is we're trying to hold the finished floor of building number 5 in the back at the existing elevation that it's at right now. And if we were to change it to a 5% slope, it would actually have to drop that back building by about 6 feet. So that's just 6 feet worth of extra material that would have to be excavated out of the site and trucked off site. So we're trying to avoid doing that. So if the commission would allow it, we'd like to try and keep the drive aisle and the parking area at 6.7% slope rather than the 5% slope. In addition to that, we are proposing some easy block walls around the site. These are located on the front of building 2, 3, and 4 in the area where the crosshatch is. And the reason for this is we're holding our garage floor at a level elevation, and then we're trying to tie it back into a 6.7% slope drive aisle. So in order to blend the contours in around to each unit, we needed to put a small wall between each unit going up this drive aisle so that we could blend it back in. So that's just a 20-foot long easy block wall, and it's only at its highest point going to be 2 feet tall. So now I'll talk a little bit about the utilities on the site. On the screen before you, the lighter blue lines represent the stormwater drainage that we're proposing for the site. We're trying to use catch basins scattered throughout the parking lot and off the side of the drive aisle. So this will collect the runoff from the pavement area, and then it'll eventually tie back into that existing catch basin down in the curb cut and back into the dividend road, just like it does today. In addition to the catch basins, we're also proposing 5 underground infiltration basins, one for each new building. And these are designed to collect the first inch of runoff for the roof area of each building. And we're proposing for them to be constructed out of concrete galleries. So they will infiltrate back into the ground, and they'll promote groundwater recharge. So we have oversized them slightly so they can hold more than the first inch of runoff for each building, but we also put an emergency overflow on each one and tied them back into the catch basins just in case for a higher intensity storm and they overflow. Also on the screen, you can see the darker blue line here. That is what we're proposing as our water lateral. And we're proposing that to tie into the existing water lateral that's coming off of Dividend Road at the front of the existing office building that's there. And then similar to that for the storm sewer, it's the solid green line that you see on the screen here. We're proposing to tie that back into the existing sanitary sewer lateral that's coming off of Dividend Road in front of the office building as well. So each building would have their own tap for each the sewer and the water. So now I'll talk a little bit about, we are proposing some landscaping for the project. Per the town regulations, we need 10% landscaping area within the parking area. And with all the islands that we have shown, we have achieved that 10% landscaping area. And we've tried to put a shade tree in every island that we're counting as the interior island. Some of them we weren't quite able to put one in because of utilities being in the way, or for instance, this island here, we couldn't really fit a tree in the island right up against the building, but every island we were able to put a tree and we put one in. And also we're proposing 2 street trees down here in the southeast corner per the zoning regulations for the frontage trees. The reason we're not adding one to the northeast corner is because presently there's a pretty big 24-inch wide trunk of a birch tree in the middle of the frontage in front of this office building. And it actually takes up the whole frontage in front of that office building right now. So if we were to try and propose another tree in this northeastern corner here, we feel it would actually be more of a hassle because then we'd have to cut down this massive tree that already exists today. So since the majority of the frontage is already taken up, we feel that we're just going to leave that side of the frontage the way it is. So now moving on to the exterior of the building. I apologize that the elevation isn't in color, but we are proposing to use a split face concrete block as the exterior material for the buildings, and it'll be painted like a brick reddish tone to blend in with the existing office building that's out there. And then also a majority of the other commercial buildings along Dividend Road are the brick color material. So we feel that that'll blend in nicely with the surroundings. And another thing to note is the only side of the building that you'll be able to see from Dividend Road is this east view here. The rest of the building, so all these garage bays, all the bays only face our access drive, so you won't actually be able to see into the garages from Dividend Road. You'll only be able to see the windows and the entrance door on the outside. So overall, we think the building will actually work really well with the site. So overall, we think that the project's really gonna help improve the site. We know that there's been a lot of complaints about the site in the not so distant past, but we think that this is a way to really clean up the site and promote indoor storage rather than outdoor storage. And we're kind of providing a space for a lot of the smaller contractors in town to have somewhere to go other than their home or wherever they are right now, to have some indoor storage and have a small office space that they can utilize. So with that, we also got comments from the town engineer and Kim. We have updated our plans and submitted response letters. So we think we addressed everything. But obviously if they have more comments, then we'd be willing to talk with them about that. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. I don't know if Jim wants to hop back in or.
Yeah, again, for the record, Jim Cassidy. So again, we submitted a letter stating how we felt we complied with all the special permit requirements. I would hope that the letter would satisfy that requirement. I'm unfortunately not gonna have enough time to go through it at this point because I'm already getting chimed to get to another meeting. But if you have any questions for Justin or I over the next few minutes here for me, I'll gladly answer any that I possibly can.
And what I
You're on mute.
sorry about that. This is a special permit, so do we want to go through the statement of compliance with section 9D? I know in the past we have gone through each item to make, at least to show that it complies with those particular sections.
Justin, can you read it into the record? You have it there.
Before we do that, Commissioner, should we make sure that if there's any questions for Mr. Cassidy before he leaves, and then he can read it in, or will there be questions?
Right, that's fine. I think, why don't we do that and see if anyone has any questions. So I'll start with Commissioner Glico.
Okay, I just had a couple questions. You showed the utilities, and you stated that there was a utility pole for power. Are you obviously putting 5 buildings there? You're going to need to put in primaries. Is there a location for a transformer pad?
The only option I found is.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, we have a series of islands. If we need transformers, we'd have to put them in one of the islands, especially in this location. I don't know if you could, my cursor, I don't think is working. Justin, can you point to the island between 1 and 2? Yeah, so in that area here and also to the back here. We have not been to the utility company yet. We'll have to work with the electric company for a final layout of what they want to do for it. But I agree, we're going to have to put a transformer somewhere on the site, but we'd have to accommodate in one of these islands or at the back near building up near building 5.
Okay, so there should be plenty of room where it's not going to encroach on any parking.
It won't encroach on parking.
You're not showing any location for a dumpster. Is there going to be individual? I mean, how are they going to handle the garbage on?
So we talked to the client today, and we were talking about that internally here in the office, and we agree that we really haven't identified a dumpster location. As Justin had mentioned, we're required to have 98 spaces. There's an excess of 12 additional spaces. So what we would do, work with town staff, is we'd eliminate at least 2, if not 4 spaces Provided 18 by 18 inch or 18 by 18 foot dumpster pad with enclosure in the area of a couple of these spaces. My thought is up in the northwesterly corner of the site. We can, right up here, we have some room where we can accommodate a dumpster pad. But we agree. Initially doing this, we didn't address that, but we do have excess room on the existing or the proposed paved surfaces to accommodate it.
And that would be screened, you said.
Screen dumpster enclosure, correct?
Okay. That's all I have.
All right, Commissioner Zarelli?
Two quick questions. Is there a lighting plan or are they just general lighting on each building?
So the lighting would be wall-mounted lights on the face of the buildings. When I say the face, it's the side that faces towards the center or the interior driveway. We're not proposing any pole lights around the perimeter. Therefore, you're not going to get any spread of lights onto adjoining properties.
Okay, and second question, I'm assuming there's going to be a fence on the top of the retaining wall on the rear to the rear of the property. How high is that retaining wall going to be all the way to the rear, that where all the contractor debris is now in the rear of the property? It's all going to be taken out and you're going to be putting the big blocks in. How high will that be?
Justin, what's the maximum height on that wall?
At the highest point is 12 feet, so there'll definitely be a fence at the top.
Yeah, so anything over 3 feet, we're going to need a retaining or a fence along the top. The building number 5, actually the back wall, it's a high foundation wall, so it'll be set back into the slope. There's no retaining wall behind building number 5. It's just that northwesterly corner where Justin has the laser pointer right now.
Nothing for,
Yes, and the construction debris would be removed. It's all going to be, we're going to clean up the site.
All right, Commissioner Marcos?
I'm okay. Just one comment. Presenters go into that full screen. My computer gets really slow. Not that they shouldn't do it, but you may not get a reaction from me as fast as you'd like.
That's okay.
Yeah, just thought I'd let you know in advance.
Yep. No, so when you are done, you can, just say, okay, I'm done. So at least we know, All right. Commissioner Silvestro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we go to that concrete or retaining wall that I guess is what on behind it on the north side? Is that where it is?
Yes.
Does it that abuts the neighbor to the north? Is there a retaining wall also?
No, there's a slope. There's a slope on that side. So the retaining wall would face into the site. You're not going to see it from the adjoining property.
Thank you. My second question, I don't know, either for Jim or for whoever. The folks that are going to be using these new buildings are individuals and businesses that are already using the site. Is that correct?
No.
No, they're new people.
What this is he's looking for a market where for the small contractor in town, your plumber, your electrical contractor, drywall contractor, have space to rent. The guy that needs to have a place to store his truck, store some supplies. This small contractors. So the way Justin had presented it is the buildings are shown as broken up into 5 or 4 units each. If we have a contractor that says, I need a little more square footage, he could take 2 units instead, have more storage room inside. So it's flexible. The other thing I should note is when you see those bricks in the units is actually a step in the unit. We mentioned about trying to work with the existing topography that's out there. That's why we have these steps. They step up about 2 feet in each unit as you go up the hill. The one important thing to talk about is that slope. The parking lot is the main drive access aisle is going to be at 6.7%. We tried to flatten out the parking lot as best we can to blend back into that. The issue, we can make it work at 5. It means we got to drop the back area at 6 feet. The big thing is by dropping it 6 feet, ultimately it means there's about another 10,000 cubic yards of material that have to come out of the site. We can make it work, but it just seems a waste to have to pull the material out. A lot more impact and have to remove material. It's not a parking lot you have in a shopping center and you have a lot of public coming in and using it, we have to be as concerned with the grade. This is people that would be using the site on a day-to-day basis and aware of it. So we're hoping we can live or work with the existing grade that's out there and not have to remove this extra material.
Well, that 6.7% slope is where my next question or questions go to. That's almost 2% above what is allowed in our regulations, if I understand the original description that was presented to us. And I just wonder, and I guess this is to you, Kim, how if there's any concern with life safety equipment dealing with that slope, should there be a problem back there?
Okay. We have not had any comments to that effect. We do have a requirement in the regulations that it be 5%. Under section 7B as in boy, subsection 4(8), and I'll read it, it's very brief. The commission may waive the requirements of this section if requested by an applicant, and it's determined there is existing topographical, geographical, or other physical conditions that are unique to the site. That was an amendment back in February of 2019. So the commission does have the ability to waive that.
Okay, and the request for the waiver seems to fit the criteria for granting that waiver as you read the regulation. But you are not, we're not clear to me at least whether the life safety people have reviewed the application and the 6.7% grade. Usually when applications come before us, fire, police, blah, 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 have already viewed it. So tell me what the status of all that is, please.
Okay, those went out. Health came back. Engineering came back, and engineering did submit a report. We also received written replies to both engineering and planning comments from Jenny Cassidy. Those were received after your packet went out. Fire department has approved it also.
Fire
Fire
has
and police. Correct.
Okay, that's kind of the one I was waiting to hear. Sometimes the size of their vehicles, a steep slope could be an issue for a larger engine or whatever. Sidewalks, there are no sidewalks being proposed?
No, there's no sidewalks being proposed. There's no sidewalks along Dividend Road in this area.
Okay. I think that's it for me right now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going
Thank
to
you.
apologize. I'm going to have to hop out here. I am still in the office, so if there are any questions that Justin can't answer, he's in the office here with me, so I'll do my best to cover.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Commissioner Evans?
All right, so I'm just looking and I see that we're going from a fairly porous site to an extremely impervious one. So my one question I have is those 3 proposed infiltration basins to delay that first inch of runoff to not overburden the stormwater drains that are that you're going to hook up to now. To what level of storm event will those things be functional? Because lately we've been having a lot of rain, 2 to 3 inches within 24-hour periods. So, so it has been calculations been run on the design that show that this can handle a 50, 100 year, or even a 200 year event.
Yeah, we actually submitted a drainage report to the town engineer, and the drainage report showed no increase in flow to that front catch basin at the curb cut post condition versus existing condition.
Even in the extreme events?
Correct. I mean, there is flow coming out of the infiltration basins. It's not holding everything back, but the final flow to the final catch basin in the series is not greater than the existing conditions.
Okay. And then are there any concerns with the existing storm drain system that you'd be hooking up to? Is it old? Because it can handle the flow off the property?
When we went to the site, so the one catch basin that's in the back of the property is not in the best shape right now because it's in the gravel area and it takes a lot of kind of the crummy runoff from the site. But we're actually removing that rear catch basin. And so the only one that we're actually keeping that's on the site existing is in that curb cut. And the pipes look clean from what we can tell. We obviously didn't do a video check of the pipes, but from what we could tell on the outside, the catch basin's in good shape and the pipes are also in good shape.
Okay. And then back to the issue of the neighbors. What you're going to have some new clients with this project? Are the hours of operation going to change to something different than what is currently occurring? And again, that question is being presented in the concern over noise with the surrounding residential neighbors.
So we don't see any change in hours from what's out there right now because the occupant of that existing building is a contractor. And another thing is with these new buildings, we envision the tenants more using them for the inside storage and not really a thing for a day-to-day operation. They're just storing things there. And then if they have a site down the road that they're working on, then they'll spend their time at the site and they'll just come back at the beginning of the day or the end of the day to grab their stuff out of their storage.
Okay. And then what, with the potential of additional clients, and again, in comparison to the status quo, were there any estimates on potential increases in traffic and the type of traffic?
We did not run the traffic report for this. I don't envision the traffic becoming too much more than what it is now. I mean, obviously there'll be a few more cars there, but we don't envision it ever being a full parking lot of cars with how many spaces we're showing. We more see it as a couple people come by here and there. Like I said, just to pick up parts, or maybe they have one secretary working in the office part of it during the day or something like that. But we don't see it being a place where clients are having customers come over and that kind of thing. It's more of a just for their own use. So we don't see it being a major traffic generator in any way.
All right. Those are all my questions for the moment.
Thank you. I have to unmute. Can you please cite the section you were talking about for the slope? Is that 7.B?
Is 7B as in boy, subsection 4, subsection 8.
Subsection 8.
I also, if I may, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, we do
Yep.
have some correspondence that I would like to note for the record. One I'd like to read for the record.
Okay.
As Jim Cassidy stated, we have 2 letters dated June 12th. They came in after your packet. One is to Steve Sopelak, Town Engineer, and one is addressed to myself, responding to our comments that we had submitted to them, to the applicant previously. We also have an email that I received Monday, June 15th, towards the end of the day at 4:27 p.m. It is from Crystal Rose and Salvatore Amato at 1 Summit Road. They are in a butter in the area towards the north of this property on Summit. The past several years, the noise pollution from 150 Dividend Road has made our backyard unusable. The removal of trees has opened up the view of unsightly vehicles and exhaust wafting into the air. Sometimes people are working on vehicles all night all hours of the night. We recently had our house appraised and it was specifically noted that the noise pollution is adversely affecting our property value. We feel the proposal to shoehorn 5 buildings on that property with 110 parking spaces would add up to that many more cars traveling on Forest Street. It would also lead to more noise and pollution and lower property values. I also want to note for the record, as with 46 Church Street, there's a staff report, the comments of which Justin and Jim have addressed in correspondence and a revised plan, which unfortunately was not, we were not able to get out to the commission, but they have addressed those comments. I would like to state, however, that over the years, our office has received several comments on noise and dust from the residents on Summit Road concerning this property. Obviously, and it should be obviously, that if one were to enclose the property, have storage inside the buildings, there would be less noise. There would be a decrease in noise. The site must comply with town ordinances. We do have a town noise ordinance. So this property, we're asking that a note be on the plan that the property does comply to the town ordinances, specifically the town noise ordinance. And it was indicated there will be no outdoor storage on site.
Thank you. Yeah, I think looking at the past history of this site, you know, it is a little concerning when the site is being made that you know, with all these buildings and also having these parking spaces and you know, I understand the contract, this will be used probably for storage inside the buildings. However, what are the guarantees like that it will not become like a storage space, you know, for some of the contractors who are running out of space, you know, the covered space. So that's real issue. The other is the catch basin. I understand there are some of the, you know, features that will cover the first rain and things like that. But is the catch basin on Dividend Road, is that like oil water separator and, you know, full catch basin?
No, it's just a typical catch basin.
Yeah, because again, now we are making all the, you know, a lot of the whole majority of property is going to become impervious, which means that a lot of impurities will be going into catch basin. So I like to address the environmental issue associated with the drainage and, you know, runoff from the parking lot and all that stuff. The other thing about the slope, maybe, I don't know if I have the latest regs, but so Kim, you said there's a section 8?
Section 7, 4, or I'm sorry, 7B as in boy.
Yep.
Subsection 4.
Yep.
8. I give you a page number, except I don't know if my book is the same as yours as far as pagination. I have page 103.
Okay, maybe I have a maybe different version. Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm looking at the waiver, and the reason for waiver is the cost that is being proposed. It's like, well, we'll have to go down 6 feet and it's going to cost, and it doesn't make sense. So I don't think, again, I'm trying to grab my head around, is this if it was like a topographical or site constraints or things like that, where you cannot, perform the cutting, I understand. I mean, here, it looks like the major concern or the justification for seeking waiver is money. Is that correct? So I like to address that and see how that meets, because a lot of people will come in the future and say, I cannot meet because of the money issue. I don't think, at least in my opinion, that money should be the factor. I think when we say other factors, it is like real site constraints. If you are trying to dig 6 feet, the next door home may fall. That kind of, real issues that we deal with and constraints. So that's what my concern is regarding the waiver. And I like to hear other commissioners' viewpoint on that particular issue as well.
Well, I think Justin, if I may, Justin, if maybe he calls up the grading plan again to discuss the slope to the rear on Summit. And if you look at that slope, that's the same slope that carries around into the rear yards of Rachel Drive and after Circle on Rachel Drive, where we had several problems. But if Justin could talk about the grading to the west.
Yeah, so right now I don't have any sheets on the presentation that have the proposed contours on it. I can talk about the grading though. So on the back of building 5 right now, the way we have it, we have the front of the building, top elevation of existing ground is about 105. So that's why we're trying to hold that finished floor at 105. So so that he doesn't have to process any more material. And in doing that, right now, we already have to have a 2-to-1 slope going up along the sides of building 5. And the rear of the building, like Jim said, is actually a high foundation wall and will be already buried into the slope. So when we drop it another 5 feet, or 5 or 6 feet, building 5 is just going to go deeper into the slope that's back there. And we're going to have to push our 2-to-1 slope even further up the hill. So one of the constraints that we're running with, as you can see on this sheet here, this right here is the 50-foot buffer for the residential zone. So when we drop the 6 feet, we might run into a problem where we're doing some pretty excessive grading into the residential buffer.
Justin, I have a quick question on that.
Yep.
If your grade right now, you're saying your rear wall is like a retaining wall. It's part of
Yep.
the foundation.
Yep.
So how high from how high is that now? Where you start your slope?
You mean how far from the top of the slope to the top of the foundation wall?
If that's being proposed right now as a retaining, if you were to lower it 6 feet,
Yeah.
would you have to change the slope, or are you just extending the wall higher?
Well, we'd have to change the slope up along the side of the building, but the rear foundation wall would still stay the same. But like the sides of the building would be buried more than they are right now.
So the slope in the rear is not going to change.
No,
It's going to stay.
Yeah, the grade in the back won't change. It'll just move a little higher up more of the building will be buried in the slope, but the existing ground elevation will not change.
Right. Then the retaining wall on the north side would just have to be extended.
Correct.
You might need a retaining wall on the south side.
Yeah, so rather than L-ing it over like 5 feet off of the parking lot, we might have to bring it all the way back to the back of the building. We haven't ran the calculations for lowering it 6 feet yet. We just did a rough calculation on how much material was going to have to come out based on lowering the whole site. So we just took an average depth of how much we were going to have to take out the whole site, and that's how we came up with the 10,000 cubic yards. But we haven't actually gone through and did proposed grading for if we had to lower that building 6 feet yet.
I think it's good to know what why you're asking for a waiver, and provide some backup rather than just saying, well, I'll have to go 6 feet. And again, yeah, going 6 feet, you are not disturbing any grades on the back side of the wall or the residence. You are just basically going down, and your retaining wall is going to be 15 feet instead of 7 feet. So I think that's I like to see more justification, because there would be a waiver involved, and we have regulations for a reason, and at least from my perspective, I like to see why we are waiving something and what are the reasons. The other question I had, I know there will be a note on the plans about construction hours to comply with the Town of Rockville Noise Ordinance, Chapter 180. What I like to do is put in the hours themselves, like say, I want to see the hours, like from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock at night, like that. So it's, if people see that every day there is activity at night, we can go back and say, after 7 o'clock, you were supposed to be not doing anything. So I like to have specific information so that our staff can monitor when there are complaints in the future.
Yeah, we can add that to the plan.
Those are my comments. Commissioners, any?
I have a couple more.
Yeah.
So just the first question, you have a Google Earth up right now, and you kind of cover the intersection of Rachel Drive and Dividend, but there is a sidewalk there. So my question to you is that, are you asking for a sidewalk waiver as part of this also, to connect to that existing sidewalk on Rachel Drive? So that would be one of the questions I would present, at least to the commissioners, but as well as to the applicant. And the second one is that if you change the slope from 6.7, you said, is that what you said, 6.7?
Yeah, that's what we're proposing right now.
So if you had 6.7, then our regulations say 5.
Yep.
If you were to meet us in the middle and just say 5.5, 5.8, whatever the number is, how much does that change the drainage on the site? I mean, does it change your drainage calculations? I remember you answering that the drainage is not really changing on the site, but with slope comes runoff change. And how will that change? Will it benefit? Will it make it worse? Will it not do anything? Can you answer that?
Yeah, so if we reduce the slope, the runoff would get better. It would go down to that front catch basin, but I don't think, I mean, I'd have to run the numbers, but a 1% slope really isn't going to make that drastic of a change on the runoff. It would have to be more like a 3% slope change really to see the difference. But obviously changing it from 6.7 to say 5.5 would decrease the runoff to that front catch basin.
And I can't remember which commissioner asked that, but I was wondering if that answer helped on when you asked what you asked. I can't remember who asked it.
On the
I think it was Commissioner Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just
Robbins, sorry.
concerned about the calcs for the drainage and so on, but it wouldn't reduce the amount. It would reduce the velocity and the rate. So
Correct.
it would adjust the characteristics of it, but not the amount.
Correct. Yeah, it would be the same amount of water flowing to that catch basin, just at a lower velocity.
Mr. Chairman, when it's appropriate, I want to ask some more questions.
yes, go ahead.
Questions asked by other commissioners have got me thinking a little bit on these new buildings. Because of their uses or potential uses, in the construction of the buildings, are you planning to put any drains inside the buildings?
We are not proposing any inside drains right now, no.
And that will not change. In other words, as individuals who want to use the buildings may have some special requests that may alter your construction plans for the buildings. Is that
Correct.
possible?
Correct. Yeah. If he has a tenant that comes through that specifically requests a garage drain, then I'm sure he'd be more than willing to put it
Well,
in.
here's what I'm getting at, and it's the chair's question on the oil separator that got me thinking that should there be a motion to approve, I think the idea of an oil separator, whatever it's called, to
Storm scepter.
either for a particular building or more inclusively for the entire site is probably a good idea. And I would ask the maker to give some thought to that at the appropriate time. My second question is the building is in the rear. And Commissioner Zarelli got to the point before I did that perhaps there is a happy medium splitting the difference between 5 and 6.7%. Will the overall height of the building be reduced if you pull some of that material out of that slope?
That physical height of the building is going to stay the same. It'll just sit lower on the ground.
Will sit lower on the ground, therefore a little less visible to the neighbors in the rear?
Correct. But the neighbors in the rear are very uphill from that building. So I think
Which leads me to my next question, and that's the mechanicals for that building. On the roof?
I'm assuming right now they're probably going to be proposed on the roof, but
And I would, that's good. That's okay. That got me where I wanted to go. I would also recommend to the maker that at least for that building, that the mechanicals be hidden from view from the neighbors to the rear. They're ugly and there's no way to make them look good. The idea of taking at least some of the slope out, as suggested by Commissioner Zarelli, which lowering the overall height of that building, I think might be a little. I mean, it's a small consideration, but it is a consideration to those neighbors that are to the west, I guess, right? That the building won't be quite as high for them and viewable. Now, are there trees and other kinds of things on that slope back there?
Yeah, currently it's forest, and on this picture that you see here, the light green represents what we're showing is being proposed as lawn, and the dark green is where the forest is. So
that's helpful.
This actually isn't. We're not really removing that many trees in the rear because the site is already excavated back there. So the trees in the area that building's going in are already gone. So a majority, like the trees that are out there now, are for the most part staying.
And I'm going to assume that the trees that are there are the type that drop their leaves and so on.
Yes.
In the fall. Maybe there is a possibility that, again, to help those neighbors, if there is room, and it sounds like that there is, to put in some pines or hemlock pine, probably better, in that it grows a lot quicker. And again, to shield, create a more solid buffer from the back of that building to the residential properties to the west. Would ask that be considered as a condition of approval should one be made. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I have to unmute myself first. Anyone else would like to comment?
I'm not sure of how how we're going to proceed public hearing, but there are a number of concerns that Packard said he would do the calculations, he would check it out and everything. I just want to point out that perhaps we should recess the hearing when everyone's finished to get some of these answers, these questions answered for the next meeting. That's just my comment.
No, I think I agree. As I think some of the commissioners pointed out, like for example, the electrical pad. I mean, that is the biggest thing. I mean, that's not even considered. Looks like where it will be going and things like that. So I think the site plan and everything that goes into should be identified and not left out. So I think it's a good point. Again, Commissioner Zarelli raised the sidewalk issue, and I think you're correct. I see the sidewalk on Rachel Drive that should be connected. Just because there is no sidewalk, again, we have said in the past, just because there is no sidewalk doesn't mean it should not be put in. So that is, we like to see sidewalk as well. And I think Commissioner Silvestro was talking about, oil water separators that should be out there so that the whole site is not dumping, environmental impurities or whatever, in the catch basins and things like that. So that should be looked at again. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to bring this project up to speed. So I agree. Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, if we keep this open, can we limit the answers for the next meeting to what we just spoke about and give them an itemized list?
That is correct.
And
Right.
is that okay, Kim, that we do that?
Well,
Yeah.
typically when you recess the hearing, it's just for those items. So if I may, could I just quickly go over my notes to tell the commission what I gleaned out of this? The transformer location, the dumpster enclosure and screening, discuss the need and possibly show an oil water separator, whether it be out on Dividend Road or elsewhere on the property. With respect to splitting the difference with the required 5% slope versus the 6.7% slope and calculations therewith. Rooftop units to be hidden, especially in building 5, sidewalk along frontage, hours of operation. And once again, if they not willing to split the difference in the slope, more justification for the waiver needed.
And I think there was also trees in the back.
Yes. Yes.
And could we get a clear statement of the actual potential uses of the clients and the activities that'll take place on site? Because there's certain uses that if take place on the site will trigger other permitting requirements from the state and other environmental concerns. And we don't know that those other uses may take place, but they could take place. So vehicle maintenance is one of them.
Does that go by the zone? Kim, does that go by the zone?
On site, they're gonna have to get a stormwater permit from the state, and then it gets back to some of the concerns that were. So just a clear statement on activities.
Okay, I
You
understand.
know, Mr. Chairman, I would add that this overall site plan is, despite these things we're concerned about, in the end, it's going to be a lot helpful. As an example, the environmental concerns that are being raised with the ideas of oil separators, et cetera, likely that sort of stuff has been going on for who knows how long, and then leaching directly into the soil. Got an opportunity to capture it now, as one example. The dust problem will go away. Concern will have to be for dust during construction, particularly on that building to the rear. But those are all those are all easily solved problems. End result is the site's going to be a lot better than it is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. I think we much better. So I think we covered all the issues, the concerns that we had.
I just want to correct, Kim, if we can just make it all utilities instead of just a transformer pad, because he said he hasn't spoken to all the utilities. Justin, is there gas in this area?
We're gonna have to look into it. As far as I know, that front building is serviced through Dividend Road for gas. So we didn't show it on the plan, but we'll have to look into that as well.
Yeah, so if we can just update that to all utilities,
Correct.
thank you.
And I think this issue goes back to, as Commissioner Robbins was saying, if you know the uses that will probably go in, then you can address all these things, whether gas distribution line needs an upgrade or electrical needs an upgrade or whatever that might be, or whether you need a storm or catch basin or drainage in the building. So all these things, once you know the uses, you can identify those things. And I have a general question. So if in the future, say this is approved and in the future somebody comes in and says, I need a drainage in my building, how would that work? Kim, will they have to come back to,
They
would that
would
be
come
like a
in,
change?
they would come into our department. Obviously, it would be reviewed by planning, zoning, building department would be key also, and town engineer. Typically, it may be approved as a minor change. That's something that we will address when we if and when we get the application. If it's deemed to be a major change, and our regulations are clear on what's a major change, what's a minor change, so we can address it at that point.
Thank you.
Kim, question about uses. So basically, do we really need an itemization of uses? And ultimately, doesn't it come down to whatever is allowed in the BP1 zone?
They're approving it, they're requesting it as a contractor's yard, small contractor's yard use. It's been a contractor's yard for as long as I can recall.
Yeah.
Prior to the current owner, and prior thereto. So they're just continuing that uses. They're actually taking, and as in my staff report, they're taking something that's happening outside and creating noise, dust, fumes, odors, and putting it inside. Basically storage, it's more of a cleaner, neater operation than what is currently present.
So for example, if they wanted to put a licensed medical marijuana dispensary, it's allowed in BP1, they would still have to come before us for site plan, right?
Correct. Plus,
And if they wanted
there's
to put
a
in,
separation distance between others, and we already have one in that general.
yeah, no, I'm just saying, and then for like an automotive service, if they wanted automotive service in there and we needed oil water, they would still have to come before us, right?
They would have to go to zoning board of appeals as well, and to P&Z. So if they want to modify what they're requesting as far as a use goes, they would more than likely have to come back to the commission.
Because ultimately the application is locking it into a contractor yard or a lumber yard, right? Under 4.B6 technology.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and the statement of support simply says indoor storage of construction materials and equipment. So if that's all that's going to happen, then there's no vehicle maintenance, there's no exchange of oil and grease outside and or inside. All those things aren't happening. So if that's the case, that's fine. But it just seems that the scope might go beyond indoor storage of construction materials and equipment. If the people who lease the buildings don't understand what the limitations are based on the proposed application.
there could be more clarification, possibly stated as far as what is not allowed.
Yeah, I mean, that would help.
I think that would be better.
Any other comments? I would like to see if there are any public comments other than what Kim read into the record. Do we have any public comments? Anybody who would like to talk on this proposal? Having none, would like to have a motion?
Motion to, what is it, table?
Yep.
Is that, motion to table the,
Re-
motion to
Motion
recess
to
the public.
recess.
There you go. Motion to recess the public hearing for the itemized list that Kim has read previously into the record.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Move on to item C.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
So am I reading this all?
How fast can you read?
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Proposed zoning regulation amendments, Alfred Truly, to add the following language to create the WBP Waterfront Business Park Zone. Number one, add to section 2.2 definition of marina, docks, dock and or docks, or basin providing secure moorings for boats and offering supplies, repairs, and other boat-related services as accessory uses thereto. Number two, add section 4.A.8 Waterfront Business Park to provide an area for mixed uses, office, retail, dining, manufacturing, and services that are compatible with and appropriate to the Connecticut River frontage. Number three, add to allowable uses section 4.B for the WBP zone principal use with a special permit site plan unless otherwise stated herein. Section 4.B.1 residential uses language and for the WBP residential use, active adult housing, housing for the elderly, assisted living facilities, residential units in one or more mixed use buildings. Section 4.B.2 commercial type uses, language add for the zone, WBP zone, retail stores in new structures of 10,000 square foot or less and in new structures exceeding 10,000 square feet. Sale of alcoholic beverages in accordance with 6K. Personal service establishment in new structures of 10,000 square feet or less and in new structures exceeding 10,000 square feet. Wholesale, commercial. Section 4.B.4 hospitality recreation type uses, language add for the WBP zone, restaurants and similar eating establishments including outdoor dining, brew pub, provided the brewery does not produce more than 15,000 barrels per year, hotels, commercial amusements, including theaters, bowling alleys, and similar uses, public and private recreation with a site plan. Section 4.B.5 office type uses add for WBP offices and new structures of 10,000 square feet or less, offices and new structures exceeding 10,000 square feet, research and development in new structures of 10,000 square feet for less, research and development in new structures exceeding 10,000 square feet. Section 4.B.6 technology industry type uses add for the WBP zone, advanced manufacturing, assembly, light assembly, warehousing and distribution of goods manufactured or assembled on premises, general warehousing and distribution. Section 4.B.7 add, for WPP community buildings center. 4.B.8 agricultural type uses, subsections 1 and 2, no permit required for farms, orchard, raising of crops, plant nursery, raising of livestock with special permit site plan for commercial greenhouses. Section 4.B.9 other uses, adding studios and galleries, marinas, brewery, producing up to 15,000 barrels per year, public or private park with no permit required. Number 5, add to section 4.c, accessory uses and structures, section 5, and any parcel used for the brew pub, use social programming events such as farmers markets, crafts fairs, casual and competitive outdoor sporting events, fundraisers, weddings, concerts, viewing parties, and other programming are permitted. Number 6, add WBP to section 4.c.4, subsection 3 in the Business Park 2, BP2, and Waterfront Business Park, WBP zone, retail sales accessory to be permitted, manufacturing or warehousing. F, add WPP requirements to section 4.d, height and area requirements, 4.d.1, the minimum lot area 20,000 square feet. Add WBP requirements to section 4.d, height and area requirements. Oh, I just read that, sorry. Lot frontage 50 feet, 4.d.2, setback requirements, minimum front yard setback 25 feet, minimum side yard setback 15 feet, 4.d.3, coverage limitations, maximum building coverage 30%, maximum impervious coverage, multi-story and single-story 40%, minimum landscaped area for multi and single-story 60%. 4.d.4, height limitations, maximum building height 55 feet, stories 4 stories.
I missed some of that. Could you do?
I'll go back, Alan.
Sorry.
Appreciate the love.
All right, the applicant, do you want to present your proposal?
There we go.
Hello, my name is Micah Kerr. I live 553 Maple Street in Weathersfield, and I am here at the Chuli's house. They're the property owners, and I am going to be just doing the speaking, as this zone request change is ultimately for a proposal that I'll be putting in front of the commission, hopefully in the near future, for my brewery business, which is Boondoggle Beers. In terms of a proposal, I suspect we're talking this particular area, we're talking about changing the wording in the zoning, the current zoning regulations. And it's an awful lot of words, because compared to that, there's a grid if you look in the zoning thing. And what we did was we sat down with the staff and the all related parties and discussed the plan of conservation development, what it was asking for, and essentially eliminated some of the current uses for the property that the town considered to be not ideal, such as automobile repair work, and tried to capture what the plan of conservation and development was asking for, which is essentially, I guess, best possible use for waterfront land in terms of taking advantage of specifically the dock on the property, and such like that. The mention on item 1 of a marina was because while we were in that meeting, we found out that there was no definition in the terms for marina. No one's obviously proposing to do anything right now, but we just thought that we should add that. And Kim and her, or I guess Kim's staff, whomever, sent us that description. So those are the town terms. I guess going over any specific point of this, I'm not sure is necessary unless you guys have questions, because it's really just the verbiage and the matrix in your plans. I think the way it was presented to you was, we're just adding a new zone, which is the office park. It's copied word for word and use for use from office park, with, I believe, the reduction of a couple uses, and that's about it. And the riverfront, right. So there was the existing riverfront zone. We are taking points from that. So as the plan of conservation and development recommended, combining the office park uses with the riverfront uses.
Okay. Kim, do you have any comments, or we?
I do have my staff report, and I also have correspondence I received 3 letters of correspondence, one of which is the Regional Planning Agency letter. I did send my staff report out to all of the applicants, but I will read with respect to the text amendment. Zoning text amendments to create a WBP waterfront business park zone and zoning map amendment. Staff is aware of a few instances where the applicant came before the commission to discuss this property. First was in 2014 preliminary discussion with the property owner to create a quote unquote old Mystic Village feel mixed use development with professional offices, housing, and a marina with ancillary uses. In 2017, there was a pre-application for a possible marina with ancillary uses such as repairs, storage, and sales. And in 2019, Micah Kerr came before the commission with a pre-application for a brewery and brew pub as the initial phase with outdoor dining, restaurants, sports courts, and a possible event venue, marina, and ancillary uses later on down the road. The waterfront, as we all know, is a grossly underutilized resource in Rocky Hill. And while there may be substantial opportunities for the property in question, there should be a focused development plan presented eventually based upon the market analysis prepared for the owner or potential tenant. The applicants before you are not coming in for the development at this time. This is strictly a text change, and then later on you will see a map change. The proposed text amendment and map amendment were both sent to Capital Region Council of Governments as well as the town of Glastonbury for comment. I do point out that because you see in the legal ad that the majority of uses are special permit uses. And one of the things I pointed out to the applicant as well, and I'll point out to the commission, though you're very familiar with the special permit criteria, one of which is uses must be in harmony with the other uses in the area. So once an application comes onto the property and gets approved for the property, that will obviously limit the number of uses that the commission may consider to be compatible. One of the words I used in my staff report was focus. And I do believe that the list of uses that were read in the legal notice is quite broad. I do think many of those uses are not compatible with one another. But this is the applicant's proposal. And as I said, once the first application comes in, that will certainly possibly eliminate the majority of the other uses that are currently being proposed in that particular zone.
All right, thank you. Are there any comments from the public?
We do have, and they may extend into the map amendment as well, so I can certainly take them up now. But we have an email dated Tuesday, June 16th. It is from Holly Curtis. I do not have an address on this. I hope this email finds you safe and healthy. I'm writing to express my support in the zone change application, 45 Evans Road. I grew up in Rocky Hill and my family is still located here. I've always hoped that the waterfront area in Rocky Hill could live up to its potential as a place to go in town and a way to bring in business. This zoning change will be a great step in a town center type development for Rocky Hill. In a email received today, June 17th, addressed to the commission, signed by Alan White from 21 Laurel Road, a member of Rock Realty LLC. This is the text change to Waterfront Business Park. My name is Alan White. I'm a member of Rock Realty LLC, a resident of Rocky Hill. Rock Realty LLC owns parcels north of Evans Road and at its end at the railroad tracks. This property is primarily used for trucking distribution center for petroleum products. Most of Evans Road is either industrial or commercial. I would not like to see residential added as a use in this neighborhood because it may clash with the existing uses. I have an email. The email was dated June 12th. It is a letter written by Capital Region Council of Governments, signed by Caitlin Palmer, Senior Community Development Planner. The letter is dated June 10th. It's a report on a referral concerning the proposed regulation amendment as well as the map. Receipt is acknowledged of the above mentioned referral. Notice the proposed referral was transmitted to the Planning and Policy Division of CROG under provisions of 8-3B of the Connecticut General Statutes as amended. The staff of the Regional Planning Commission of the Capital Region Council of Governments has reviewed the zoning referral and finds no apparent conflict with regional plans or policies or the concerns of neighboring towns. Staff encourages the appropriate use of property in proximity to Connecticut River to take advantage of the river as a resource and amenity, but also encourages regulations that supports the regional goal to grow and develop in harmony with natural resources. As such, staff encourages the towns to require, if not already doing so, best management practices, BMPs, to prevent non-point source pollution from construction and encourage use of low impact development techniques for new development, and encourages land uses along town lines which are compatible with or prevent harmful development impacts on natural resources and land uses in neighboring lands and abutting municipalities. And that is all the correspondence I have received.
You're on mute.
Sorry. Anyone
Easy to
in the
forget.
anyone in the public who to comment on this proposal? Do we have anyone in line? Having none, I'll just go back to the commissioners. I'll start with Commissioner Oglico.
I have a question for staff. This map, the abutters map that was sent, it's dated 4/15/2020. And on the left side of this map, it calls out 80 Belmos. But I think in a previous meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, that property got subdivided and sold off.
The
Is that-
abutters list is actually in the, there is an exhibit. The abutters list is in that exhibit for the abutters. This is more so for the map change also. There's a map change that goes along with this. That's a separate application.
So is there an additional that's not listed?
The abutters list, this is the abutters list for the zone change. What now we're considering is the text change at this time.
Okay. All right, then I'm good.
Commissioner Israeli?
I go through, just a question to the applicant. I know that you spoke as a specific use for boondoggle, and per staff and what has been said previous to this is that there's been several applications trying to get this property developed. Why create another zone rather than just try to expand the use of what you're already doing? And the reason why I asked that question is that I get what you want to do, but unfortunately by adding all these things to the zone, to create a new zone, there'll be a fear knowing that looking at what the zone is now, it is the properties along the river. There's three properties, there's three pieces along the river, and then there's one across the train tracks. And so feasibly, there could be many uses in this area. And I just see a fear of what's going to go on, that, yeah, the three parcels on the river are developed the way we all thought as a waterfront, but then that fourth piece, as if, and I know we're talking about a map and another thing, and maybe I'm just jumping the gun on this, but can you take us through why, I think you said it in your presentation, but can you take us through the rationale of why not just go for what you needed in the waterfront zone or in the existing zone, rather than create all these different categories and just do it with an application?
So to answer your question, the plan of conservation development adopted by the town very specifically states the need to create a zone for 45, 10, 15, there's a few properties, but essentially the properties around 45 Evans Road to be a business park zone that embraces the waterfront usage. If you look at the zoning as it stands today, there is no use of restaurants, there is no use of any outdoor recreation. It's essentially an industrial area. And while that is the history of the area in Rocky Hill, I think it behooves the town to get maximum use out of what is now a clean river with a beautiful vista. And so I guess I'm trying to do what the town itself is adopted as its code of future development, I think circa 2017.
Victor, I can read into the record. It's on page 62 of the Plan of Conservation and Development. I'm talking about the 2015 documents. It's guide and manage business development. It's under reconfigure zones, and it's number 2. Create a new business park 2 BP2 zone based upon office park zone, including a provision within the BP2 zone to make provision for and take advantage of the deep water port facilities at Evans Road. The only property in Rocky Hill that has a deep water port facility at Evans Road is in fact 10, 15, and 45 Evans Road. So that one line in our plan does in fact target this property. So.
And pardon me, Kim, if I may, to answer you further, Victor, everything that we've put in this zone, we designated as site plan approval required. So as I think Kim even mentioned, any use that any developer, future owner for the next however many years brings forward, the commission now, then, whenever will get to decide whether the use is appropriate for the property. So if as the one letter said that they don't believe housing is appropriate, if somebody, and it will not be me or the Chuleys that I know of, but maybe someday somebody will propose a retirement home there, and the Connecticut River could be a vastly different property at that time, but it will be up to the board, the commissioners at the time to make that decision. And I think that's the safest way to develop a property like this, because I think it holds so much potential value for the town.
I have nothing further right now.
All right. Commissioner Monhouse?
I just clarification, talking about creating a zone, not modifying an existing zone for 3 properties or 4. I'm looking at the item D, which is into more specifics there. Hello?
Yep.
I just lost you guys.
No, we can hear.
Yeah, I'm having computer problems tonight. I'm really that full screen back about an hour ago really sucked memory. So we're talking about 4 properties that we're going to make this zone. I'm looking at it. ID 14, 393, 395, and 394, and then, oh, and I-394 again. So we're talking about creating a zone for 3 properties, is that correct?
10, number 10, number 15, number 45, and 35, Evans Road.
Yeah, right. I'm looking at the ID numbers, the town ID numbers, but it's 4 properties. 3 of which I believe are on the opposite side of the river side of the tracks, and 1 is on Evans Road itself, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's it. I just clarify the specific properties that we were talking about. That's all for now.
All right. Commissioner Silvestro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am struggling a bit with the same general question that Commissioner Zarelli had. And that is that the request for a zone change has pretty much thrown in everything and anything into this new zone. I think we all have to remember that this is the Planning and Zoning Commission. Zones are created for the orderly development and planning of a community. And I don't see order in planning when you have literally soup to nuts proposed in this new zoning change. The planner you mentioned or used the word focus, and that it lacks focus. And in my judgment, she's correct. So I'm struggling with your request. Let me be clear, very clear, that no one wants to see the development of this particular property and development along the Connecticut River more than I do. I do see the potential for this piece of property, the unique potential, Deepwater Port, Deepwater Docks, excuse me, as an example. But I believe you might be better served if you did not propose a new zone, but work within the existing zones and get a lot more focused on what your immediate and perhaps longer term objectives are for the property. And I need some convincing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Robbins?
Okay, so I'm just going back in time, and when we met to update our proposed zoning regulations multiple times, together with our professional consultant, we did look at the plan of conservation for the town, and we did discuss this specifically, and we did create a BP2, and we did create a waterfront zone specific to this property along the river because of the Deepwater Docks. So we had those conversations before. So where I'm struggling is that there's a proposed amendment, but I haven't seen a clear definition of the problem statement, which is what is the issue with the proposed waterfront development that this change, what is the value of this change that over what currently exists? So there must be some limitations within the waterfront district that are of concern, but we haven't defined what those are. So what's the back and forth between the change? What's the benefit? What's the value?
Very specifically, and again, the way it came over in the word change that we're all looking at is part of it. But if you look at the matrix of what's allowable and what's not in each of the zones, A, the zone that's existing, which is the W waterfront zone, and B, what is I believe it's called BP2 zone, which the part of the property was changed to. Those properties or those zones do not allow for the restaurants. They do not allow for brew pub for brewery use. And at the bare minimum, those are my primary businesses. So if you, for the problem statement, absolutely, I need to operate a brewery there, and brewery requires industrial, but also customer facing space. And on top of that, we typically provide food. And I think it's hard to argue that a waterfront area doesn't make a great place to have a restaurant. Additionally, I believe the zone didn't have the language for marina, and therefore there was no ability, even if there's no ability to do any marina type development, except for, I believe you could have done boat maintenance and boat storage on the property, but no, there was nothing around boat slips or the ability to actually bring a boat there. So what it was some possible omissions in the zone itself that actually didn't allow for waterfront use in the only waterfront property that can be developed like that. So, but if I also may be for Mr. Silvestro, you know, you say you want to be convinced, but I'd love to hear from each of you who might have an issue, what specific uses might not be appropriate for a waterfront, because certainly open-minded, you know, like obviously this is a conversation and we want to find out what works best for everyone. But if it's something to do with a housing use, as an example, because there was a letter, I believe, that mentioned housing, you know, that's included in there because I think you could say that housing would be a great thing along the water in a multifamily environment. But housing was allowed in the old waterfront district, but it is not allowed in the BP2 district. Only office use, light industrial is allowed in BP2. So what happened is that when those zones change, it actually doesn't embrace the water. It's just an office park that happens to be on the water. And so we would be happy to edit the waterfront zone to allow for these uses. But my understanding, and I guess this is up to Kim to answer too, but my understanding is there are other waterfront zones in town that may not be appropriate for all of these uses. So that's up to you guys to decide. I'm certainly not an expert there, but the reason that we discussed a new zone is because, again, the plan of conservation and development very specifically identifies this parcel for these uses, not any of the other waterfront areas in town.
So at this point, rather than ask more questions, I think there's a lot on the plate here. So I think for us to go any further with this, we need to meet, discuss, and deal with the larger issue. To deal with it in this format, there's literally multiple meetings where we had discussions before. We don't want to make any mistakes. It may be just a case of what was said before that we just may need to consider looking at. Are there some uses left out of the waterfront district that are problematic? And if if they're not compatible to both of the two waterfront districts we have, then maybe we need, you know, waterfront 1 and waterfront 2. But do we need an entirely new district? I'm not sure, but there seems to be quite a bit to discuss here.
I also want to point out to the commission, when you do make a decision, and this has come up time and time again whenever we have a zoning text change, if you look at section 9E as in Edward, subsection 3, that provides you some guidance with respect to what it is you're looking for as far as decision making goes as well.
All right. I think I share the same concerns as other commissioners. And again, I want to point out that CD is a guiding document. That is not the regulation. The regulation is the you know what the regulations are adopted. So again, I think as Commissioner Robbins said, we had discussed this in very detail, and granted that we may have identified certain locations of the town to be developed in a certain way. I think what we have to look right now is some focused use that you are looking for that complements the waterfront. I mean, there is like almost full page of uses that are being proposed for this waterfront, for this new zone. So I think it is up to the applicant to be more focused on what they want to do and what they're trying to do and achieve, rather than putting everything into the, because again, there are a lot of things here. I mean, that are in here that we can't go, at least in my opinion, we can't go one by one and say, okay, take these out, take these out, take these out, and then, everything else is fine. I think there has to be a mission on what you guys are trying to do that complies with the existing zoning and POCD and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot to grasp. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you were finished.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
if I can make a comment. We're in a public hearing here. This is not an agenda item or a debate among the commissioners. We're looking for information from the applicant and from the public on what this proposal is, not that we're evolving the application at a public hearing. So I think we should, I think we've addressed pretty much everything that's involved with this particular application. And when we get to discuss a decision or whatever, that would be in the body of the meeting later on tonight. And then, depending on what decision we come to, make recommendations at that point, but not at this point in the hearing. And I agree with both you, Mr. Chairman, and Robbins, that I don't know how many hours we spent at public hearings and workshops and meetings back in 2017. It must have been, I'd say, about 15 to 20 hours combined, rewriting the regulations, and we covered pretty much everything the way we saw it, with the guidance of a professional, Glenn Chalder. So we're pretty all-inclusive, I believed at that time. And if we have to look to the future, that would not be, I don't think that should be done in a situation like this. But that's my opinion, which I shouldn't be expressing at a hearing. So let's just proceed with what we've got and see where we go later on in the evening. That's it.
Excuse me.
Pardon me, Al's the property owner, so.
Al Chuli here. Hello, guys. I just have a little bit I want to interject. You know, without being overbearing or whatever, however you want to word it. You talk about what you've done for, the 15 hours you put in. I would say I'm into thousands of hours over 30 years. And I've continuously worked with the town to try to get this so it's the best for the town. We spent probably a couple hundred hours with Kim and her staff over the last couple of years trying to put this package together. I suggested a Riverfront 2 zone because you guys changed the zone of Riverfront so you couldn't have restaurants, which would be our main anchor. And then we go to Business Park to be able to get the brew pub, but that doesn't allow restaurants. So basically what we did is we combined the 2 zones to create a new zone. And we didn't make this up. This was with many hours, many hours with staff. We deleted many things. And we went through a list with them saying, this was good, this isn't good, this is good, this isn't good. We didn't make this up. This was in conjunction with the staff that they felt was best for the town for this parcel. So I'm sure you're not going to change Riverfront so it'll take restaurants, and you're not gonna change brew pub, so it'll take restaurants. So we have to come up with something that'll work, whether it's called Business Park 3 or Riverfront 2, it doesn't really matter. But these items that are listed for possible uses, almost every single one of them is a special permit, which means you guys could pretty much shoot just about anything down. But what we did is we combined the two lists together, and we sat down with Kim and the Economic Development, Mr. Carpentino, and we went through the list, and we said, no good, no good, good, no good. And we generated what we thought would be good for this particular zone. I understand that it's a scary thing to look at this and say, hey, there's a farm here. Well, obviously, we're not going to put a brew pub in a farm. And obviously, whatever commission is voting at that time is not going to allow that, because the majority, and Kim, you could correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of what's on this paper is via special permit. So you guys need to I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you need to kind of step back and look a little bit different. That I didn't make this list. We all made this list, and we all interjected into it what we thought was the best for the property and the town and our goals for the property, which the main anchor would be restaurant, brew pub, arena, and neither Riverfront or Business Park will allow all of those things. And that's really what we need to get. If you want to go through each thing and cross out farm and cross out whatever, basically what I got from staff, and she could correct me if I'm wrong, is we're combining two things, and it is special permit. And if you start doing crossing out every little thing, it's just doesn't make sense. So we picked the items we thought were most applicable for the property out of both zones and decided this is the way to go. I don't care if they call it Riverfront 2, Business Park, Waterfront, whatever they call it, but for us, there's like 3 main uses. All right, and if you guys want to go through the list and say, etch this, etch this, etch this, I don't have a problem, but we spent more than 15 hours, and Kim will verify it, going through this list over and over and over and back and forth. I gave up tons and tons and tons of stuff. And like I said, at this point, I'm getting older. I want to move on with my life. I want something good for the town. And I got a person in hand, and I don't want to blow this by a bunch of little technicalities. So that's just my opinion, and you don't even have to answer. I just wanted to keep that in the back of your head when you're having your discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I
yep.
may just respond, as I did state previously, I did state in my staff report, and they certainly are in receipt of it, that there should be a focused development. Keep in mind, this is not for development purposes at this time. And we as staff did not put this regulation amendment together. We did not write this regulation amendment. I want to clarify that also. Yes, Mr. Micah Kerr was correct when I did provide him a definition of marina. Keep in mind, it is on the water, and they do have the deep water dock. We did reference the POCD as far as taking advantage of that. In my staff report, I do talk about the majority of the uses being proposed being special permit uses. And I also use the words diverse and disparate because they are. I don't believe all these uses should be put on the property or allowed to be on the property at one time, and the special permit process certainly will eliminate a lot of them. But does the owner really want to propose a regulation that could possibly allow this? And obviously the commission would have to determine if it's in harmony or not. But once again, I use the word focus, I use the word disparate. We did talk through the years, and many of the people on this commission have been around for several sets of regulations where we discussed the waterfront zone versus the BP zone, and what property owners might consider to be valuable to them for development purposes. As I mentioned, there were 3 instances I'm aware of, 2014, 2017, 2019, times when current owner and Mr. Micah Kerr came before the commission to discuss what their thoughts were for the property. There were never any applications. There were 2 pre-applications, which is non-binding on the commission and non-binding on the pre-applicant. So I just want to state that for the record for clarification purposes.
Thank you.
If I may as well, in relation to this block of text that we're looking at, if you read it, it does look like we're asking for a great deal of changes. And it's sort of unfortunate because I guess maybe that's on us for not presenting you something in a shiny PowerPoint. But most of these are already allowed on the property in its current zone. And what it is the wording, if as I think Al mentioned, farm use. Rocky Hill is a right to farm community. Therefore, every single zone in the entire town has the exact same wording. But since we're proposing a new zone, we specifically have to say for B8 agricultural type uses and then all the remaining text. And that's exactly the same as every other zone in the town. And so I guess, if it comes down to maybe having to digest this in a different look, I certainly can provide the matrix, which shows what is currently allowed and what we're asking to change. But this is the word change. And Kim, I thought we sent that on as supporting documentation. Is that accurate?
And that did go to the commission in their packet. They
Okay.
have received it. They received it last week, except for Commissioner Glico, who was just recently appointed once again to the commission. So he received it this week. The other commissioners received their packet last week. And the text, as you presented it to me with the yellow highlighting, given the pages of the regulations, was given to each commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just so if you're going to have to review it, by all means, take your time. This is whatever, no small thing. I get it. A lot of people spend a lot of time over the years on this, but if you refer to that matrix, you will see we're not asking per se for a lot. We're taking existing uses that work. Like if we were coming before you 5 years ago, most everything that we're looking to do was actually allowed in the zoning at that time. So, just for whatever that's worth, we're not asking for a lot. It's just it's the creation of a new zone. So not the editing of an existing zone.
Yeah, I think we did receive the whole package, and I think you can see from what is allowed in BP1 and BP2 versus WBP. I mean, you can see the difference, and you can look at the boxes that are
Right.
checked, and I think it's a lot more than what's allowed even on BP1 and BP2.
Commissioner Desi, or Chairman Desi, it is waterfront districts now, though. It's currently W, so please compare it to the W district. And the plan of conservation and development recommended to allow for office park. So that's why we included some elements of the office park. So that's just, so remember, we're basing this off of a waterfront existing zoning, not the BP zone.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Seeing none, can I have a motion?
I'm having the
Yeah.
problem you have with the motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So isn't there another item on the agenda?
Yeah, we have to read that in.
Yeah, we have to
now.
read that in. Right? This is item C. So it looks all in favor, 5-0.
Yes.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. And we move on to item D.
Item D, public hearing D, proposed zoning map amendment, Alfred D. Truly III, proposing to change the zone on 10 RZ 15 and 45 Evans Road from waterfront to waterfront business park, ID 14-393, 14-395, 14-394, and to change the zone on 35 Evans Road from BP2 Business Park to Waterfront Business Park, ID 14-394.
As the applicant, if you want to comment on, give any background or any additions.
I suspect it's just the map for this, but earlier, and I wanted to get to this because I think it was Commissioner Angelico. I'm ruining your name. I apologize. But you mentioned something wrong with the map, and I just wanted to make sure that we take this opportunity to collect that information.
I stated that I thought at a previous meeting that there was a subdivision done on Belmos property. And I was asking staff if that was true.
There was in fact a lot called out. I don't know if that deed has been filed as of yet on the land records. So
Okay.
if it's not been filed on the land records, it would not appear on this.
And I was looking back at older meetings, so I don't know what the date was of that.
Yeah, I don't happen to have that information right now.
That's okay.
Okay.
All right, applicant, do you have any comments, or I can?
I don't know if there's anything different to be said, I guess, right? If the commission wants to take time to look over this, then talking about the map probably is a moot point. Would you guys agree?
I think we will, that the commission will discuss when they take up the vote. So,
Yeah.
Right. So I just wanted to make sure you don't have anything to say, like, or add of whatever you have said before.
I don't believe the map brings up any additional comments, no.
Okay, thank you. I'll just go over, again, I'll ask, is there any public who would like to comment on the proposal? Other than whatever, I don't know if Kim has any written email. Other than,
We do have the correspondence from the Capital Region Council of Governments, as I read into the record for the previous application. That does tie in, it's both the text change and the amendment. Just concerns about low impact development and best management practices.
all right. So if there are no public comments, I will go to commissioners. Commissioner Glico.
Sorry about that. I'm good.
Okay. Commissioner Zarelli.
Just a question about 35 Evans, adding it to the zone. Are you doing that just to be contiguous with all your properties? Or is there a reason why you want to add it, knowing that you have to cross the railroad tracks to use that property as part of the zone?
I can answer that for you. This property in these 4 parcels go back to the 1930s, which actually predates zoning, which came in the late 50s. Actually, there was only 3 zones, but the outside zone was all parcel was always part of it. And then the town swapped one of the parcels with us back years ago. So the 4th parcel we gained the 4th parcel, and they got part of 35 Evans Road, for which was at that point Clary Millworks. We really want to separate it. In fact, we thought that would be a good place for boat repair or storage or something like that. So if we are putting in a marina, we figured that would be a good place to put boats and store boats or repair boats or sell boats or whatever, something along that lines where it's not actually attached. So if we have a brew pub, you don't have to see someone fixing boats or storing boats, but it's still attached to the property. So it's an additional use to the property. So we figured that would be the best way to do it. It's kind of like putting something in your backyard. It's there, but you don't see it. So the reason we kept it attached is it's been attached since the 30s. And we figured if we go with the marina at some point, if someone goes with the marina at some point, they could put storage on boats there, repairs, sales, whatever else, which is part of our application submittal for some of the uses. So that's why we ended up doing it, which is better for the town because right now it's being used as a contractor's yard and it's, going to have to go through a process with the town, which is going to make it more aesthetically appealing for the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Morales?
I'm okay for now. I have some comments, but that's during the later on tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Silvestro?
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Robbins?
Just a question on a point of order. Can we even vote on this if we don't have a waterfront business park district yet?
This is a public hearing.
Right. I mean, this is,
Right, but
Yeah.
but agenda item C is intrinsically linked to D, but they're separate on the agenda. So
But that's the agenda. That's not the public hearing.
so we will have to, we'll address it when we take the votes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You're right. I'm thinking of, when we're discussing. Okay, so just disregard that. Nothing else.
All right. Yeah, I don't have anything. Can I have a motion unless anyone has any questions or comments to make? If none, can I have a motion, please?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item 3 on the agenda, public. Is there anyone in the public who would like to address the commission on the items that are not on the agenda? Is there anyone who would like to comment on or address the commission from the public on the items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, hearing none, I'd like to move on to next agenda item, the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second,
All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 5.
A, special permit application site plan for Joseph Demaro proposing to demolish an existing garage and carport and construct a 16 by 21.3 two-story building addition to add a 1-car garage and 1-bedroom apartment to an existing mixed-use building located at 46 Church Street in a town center zoning district, ID 10-023.
Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve agenda item A, Joseph Demaro, with the following conditions, to change the rear of the development per staff comments to more green space and to have a maximum of 8 parking spaces on the property. And also to any staff comments that are needed to that.
I think one
I'll second
item.
it. Second that.
All right. There was one item that staff had asked to put in, which was if they come in the future, if they need additional spaces, then they be allowed to have those spaces, right, Kim? Can you?
Yes, to basically approve showing the spaces, but showing them as like reserved parking. That way, should they need to build them in the future, whether there be unsafe parking on the street due to this particular property, or whether there be parking in the fire lanes due to the uses in this particular property, that we as staff can go back and say, okay, Mr. Demaro, we need to add 2 spaces. You're taking out so many, and we're going to have you build 2 of them.
Right.
So I present that to the seconder to see if we can add that as part of the condition, as more than staff comments to what Kim said.
To what Kim said, I'll accept that.
I accept it also.
All in favor?
Well, we need-
Mr. Chairman,
We need to
Point of
talk about it first,
clarification.
yeah.
Okay,
could I get a point of clarification
yes, yes.
before you vote? Does the motion with the total number of parking places include the garage?
What was presented in the plan, I believe the garage was a space as part of the plan, so yes.
Okay, fine. So so everyone's clear. I'm good. Thank you.
All
In
right,
that case, would we say 7 parking spaces plus the garage? That would be clearer.
I'm okay to modify that condition if that will suffice with the seconder.
And being the secondary, yes.
Nice.
any discussion on the motion? Or any more clarifications? Seeing none, would like to have all in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night. Thank you.
A good one.
Good night.
Now we move on to agenda item 5B.
B was recessed, so we are going to, is the proper term table it, or do we just go on?
We just move on.
We move on,
Okay.
right? Okay. 5C.
5C, proposed zoning regulation amendments, Alfred D. Chuli III to add the following language to create the WBP Waterfront Business Park Zone. Refer to item 2C, subsections 1 through 6.
Can I have a motion, please?
I would make a motion to deny based on the fact that, a motion to deny, and then we'll discuss it after a second.
I'll second for purpose of discussion.
I think we recognize a number of issues with this application, and one of which we couldn't discuss during the hearing, but this is almost a classic case of spot zoning. The applicant came in looking for actually a new zone created and then a change to the zoning map for 4 properties that the applicant owns, him and herself, which is typical spot zoning. Plus, I don't think a lot of the things that were asked for are appropriate for those particular properties. One of which is a serious safety issue. If allowed 90% of what was asked, we have a very narrow road. And if we're going to have a restaurant or a brew pub or whatever they want on that property to overlook the river, you're going to be having traffic in and out of a 1-lane road. The bridge is a concrete bridge that's forever, and there's no way that it could possibly be widened. So I don't think this is an appropriate change. I think I should have said, I'm sorry, when it comes time, I'll amend the motion. I should have said motion to not deny without prejudice. The applicant can come back in with an alternate proposal or a proposal or a clarified proposal for the property itself. But at the same time, as Commissioner Robbins mentioned, and I forget if 1 or 2 other commissioners mentioned, everything being asked for is already covered in other zones. So there's really not appropriate for us to create a zone to duplicate what's already been approved, change the zone regulations 2.5 years ago. Those are my comments.
So just to clarify, Commissioner Morris, are we changing the motion to without prejudice? And do we have to back out the motion and reinsert the motion the proper way?
I think maybe if we just ask Commissioner Silvestro, the seconder, if he's okay with that.
I've been waiting to do just that, Commissioner Moorhouse. I was going to ask that you amend your motion to add without prejudice. No problem.
Okay. So I think that is procedurally, that's acceptable.
All right. Any further comments? Any, Commissioner Glico?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Zarelli?
Nothing further than what was already said. I agree that there's just been too many things thrown at the zone, and that if we have something before us that just doesn't generalize things, I think that'd be much better. So that's why I believe that without prejudice is a great way to go.
Thank you. Commissioner Silvestro?
Basically the same comments. Without prejudice, I think is important. I know the applicant has heard clearly the concerns of the commission. This gives him an opportunity to go back, reconsider, and come back to us at its earliest with a more focused application or other types of requests for changes within existing zones or whatever. But the point is that he would not have to sit out a year waiting. He can get his act put together, so to speak, in a very timely fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Robbins?
I'm not seated, so I don't think I can.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Commissioner Marhos, you had a question?
No, I was just going to mention that Commissioner Robbins isn't.
Yes, sorry. Yep. I think I have same questions about the proposal, and by denying without prejudice, I think that helps the applicant in focusing on what the applicant would like to do and what is allowed already in the zoning, and that will be aiding in attaining the purposes of these regulations, will aid in protect public health, safety, welfare, and property values, in general, as Commissioner Marhos said, safety, the bridge issue. So I think I think for those reasons, I'd be probably agreeing with the motion. Any further comments? If none, can we have a vote? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? A motion passes 5-0. Let's move on to item 6. Any other business, zoning enforcement?
What do we do with D? Do we just say D is
sorry.
not valid, or
I
do we
think
handle
we should have a
D?
motion to deny also, since it's coupled with the item C.
Gotcha. So item D, proposed zoning map amendment, Alfred D. Chuli III proposes to change the zone on 10 RZ, 15 and 45 Evans Road from waterfront to waterfront business park, ID 14-393, 14-395, and 14-394, and to change the zone on 35 Evans Road from BP2 Business Park 2 to Waterfront Business Park, ID 14-394.
Can I have a motion, please?
Okay, a motion to deny without prejudice.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Now move on to item 6. Any other business? Kim?
Zoning enforcement, you have in your packet also a memorandum that I sent on to our town manager and our town treasurer concerning the streets and the sidewalks. We had some discussion on that with the town manager, and he, I know, had separate talks with our department head. So we do have an outstanding item to be added to the sidewalk fund. So once that goes in, I'm sure something will be finalized as far as that goes. We just recently amended our subdivision regulations to clarify the housing sidewalk waivers. We've been dealing with multiple requests under the reopening guidelines, and while it's not zoning, fortunate or unfortunately, we in planning and zoning have been designated as the municipal designees with respect to the governor's executive orders on the COVID-19 operations with outdoor dining, outdoor retail, and now we're entering phase 2. So we're getting a lot of requests as far as what are the requirements as far as phase 2 reopening goes. So we've been spending a good portion of our time on COVID-related land use issues. We do have several dust complaints as construction is underway in a few sites in town. You may be aware that 1864 Sidestein Highway, the AutoZone property, those Mylars have been signed, and the building is now down. That's across from Kohl's, so we have received some dust complaints there. If you've been around the center of town, you'll see that they've begun site work for the community center addition. So that'll be keeping us busy as well.
All right.
And tall grass, obviously. It's the time of year with foreclosures, we're getting a lot of tall grass complaints.
All right. Item 6B.
Concerning minor modifications, we did have a request and it was signed by myself, and also Tom Roybal was available to come into the office and sign the Mylar and was recorded. The property at 1380 Celestine Highway, that's the rebuild of the gas station down at the end of the off ramps for exit 24, just before Town Line Road. They had a proposal for a pad, a concrete pad, to service the propane tanks that they had on site. There's a propane exchange station there. They had proposed a concrete pad running perpendicular to the wetlands area. In order to further the cause of wetland protection, we asked that they move the concrete pads perpendicular to the wetlands to run parallel to the wetlands and thereby being further away. So we deem that to be a minor change.
All right. Communications.
I don't believe we have any.
I just like to make a comment on, this time around, we got the staff comments on the proposals, and I feel, that was very helpful. And I think kudos, Kim, you did a good job. And I like to continue this and for the future proposals, and also include comments from police and fire. So we have the whole package in front of us and all your recommendations. So I think I really appreciate, and hopefully other commissioners can talk about themselves what they feel.
I absolutely support that, Mr. Chairman. In fact, I think sometime in the past, that used to be the procedure. Those staff comments are very helpful to us. Thank you.
I will definitely add the other comments. We farm the plans out whenever we have an application. We farm the plans out as a matter of course to the building department, to health district, fire department, and police department, as well as engineering for their feedback and comments. Oftentimes, we just get the standard check mark with approval. Every now and then we do get comments. However, it is related more toward their particular disciplines. For example, the building official might make a comment on a building code issue of which this commission is not party to that. If it goes to something that the commission has under this jurisdiction, I will certainly include it in the packet.
All right, thank you. Item 8, approve bills.
We do not have any.
And our favorite item.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
folks.
Good
Good
job.
night.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
We'll
Good
see you.
night.
Yep, I know.